I was 16, living in a small Ohio town where cold mornings felt heavier than my parents' expectations. Our house looked quiet from outside, but inside voices always trembled like thin glass. My parents treated my younger brother Mason like a treasure dipped in gold. While I was expected to carry silence, everyone in the neighborhood believed our family was perfect because they only saw the smiles we wore for them. But I saw the cracks in the walls and the cracks in their love. Every single day Mason walked like the world belonged to him, and my parents followed his steps like he was royalty. I worked hard, studied late, helped around the house, but none of it earned the love he got effortlessly. They called him their pride and joy, while they called me responsible one, like responsibility was a burden I must carry alone. I kept my voice low because loudness for me meant disrespect, but loudness for Mason meant he was confident. My room became my hiding place, but even there their expectations followed me like shadows. I often lay awake imagining a future where I could breathe without waiting for someone to judge the way I inhaled. School was my safe space, the only place where people saw me not as the background character of my brother's story. Teachers praised me, classmates respected me, and for a few hours each day I felt like a real person. But even that safety began fading when Mason started getting into fights at school. Teachers called home, but my parents defended him with blind loyalty, saying boys will be boys. I watched quietly as he lied his way through every problem, laughed his way through every punishment. I wondered if anyone would ever see the truth, or if I would always be the one who paid for his mistakes. My parents believed every word he said, even when logic bent under the weight of his stories. If Mason broke something, I fixed it. If Mason yelled, I stayed silent. If Mason stumbled, I was expected to hold him up. I learned to shrink myself to keep peace inside the house. One evening at dinner, Mason bragged about shoving a kid during gym. My parents laughed like it was harmless fun. I felt a knot twist in my stomach because I knew that laugh meant someone else would suffer for what he did. Later he came into my room smirking like he carried a secret crown on his head. He said, "Tomorrow gonna be funny," and I felt worry creep into my chest like thick smoke. I tried asking what he meant, but he only grinned wider and walked away, leaving fear behind him. I slept restlessly, dreaming of falling without landing, as if my whole life was built on unstable ground. Morning arrived with gray skies hanging low like a warning. I dressed carefully, hoping the day would be normal, knowing deep inside it would not. At school, whispers floated like dust in sunlight, and Mason walked with extra pride in his step. I watched him from across the hallway, feeling something breaking before it even happened. The gym bell rang, echoing through the hall loud enough to drown my heartbeat. Students gathered for class, energy buzzing like a restless storm. I kept my distance from Mason, sensing trouble, but trouble did not need my permission. A sudden shout filled the room, sharp and startling, making everyone freeze. I turned and saw Mason pushing a boy twice his size. The boy stumbled, hit the ground, and held his jaw in pain. Teacher rushed and students whispered, but Mason stood there, expression calm like he had planned every second. The teacher pulled him aside, asking what happened, and I felt dread crawling into my bones. Mason pointed at me, calm, confident, saying I pushed the boy, and he only reacted. My breath caught in my throat, the world tilted, as if my feet no longer touched the ground. Students turned to me with eyes wide, confused, shocked, but no one defended me. The teacher frowned and said, "We will call your parents," and my heart sank to the cold floor. I tried to explain, but my words felt thin, like they were sliding off the walls unheard. Mason pretended to look sorry, but I saw victory shining in his eyes. I walked out of the gym slowly, my hands trembling as if truth was slipping from my fingers. I knew my parents would believe him before I even reached the office, because they always did. My chest tightened, thinking of the punishment waiting at home. Every hallway light felt too bright, exposing every fear inside me. I wished anyone would listen, but silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. By the time I reached the main office, I already felt guilty for something I had not done. And that was the moment I realized my life was about to change. The office smelled like old carpet and cold air, and the secretary barely looked up as I walked in. She handed me a slip and told me to wait while she called my parents, and each second felt heavier than the last. I sat on the wooden bench, staring at the floor tiles, wishing they could open and swallow me. Students passed by whispering, wondering how the quiet girl ended up in trouble. I felt my throat tighten because I had never even pushed anyone in my life. The walls felt closer and the air colder, like the whole building already believed I was guilty. The phone rang and the secretary nodded stiffly as she spoke to my mother. I could hear her voice leaking through the phone, loud, sharp, disappointed. Without knowing a single detail, she said clearly, "We will come immediately," and my stomach twisted so hard I felt like I could break. I sat still, hands clutched together, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. The door burst open 20 minutes later, and my parents walked in with expressions carved from anger. Mason followed behind them, pretending to look nervous, hiding a smirk that burned into my memory. My mother looked at the principal and said we are ashamed of her behavior, as if the story had already been decided. I tried to speak, but my father raised his hand warning me to stay silent. The principal repeated what Mason said, and I watched my parents nod without hesitation. Their trust in him felt like a wall I could never climb. They never even asked me what happened, never asked for my side, never paused. When the meeting ended, my mother grabbed my arm tightly, pulling me outside without a word. Cold wind slapped my face, but her grip hurt more than the air. Mason walked behind us, humming like he had won a prize at a carnival. In the car, my father exploded, saying, "How dare you embarrass this family?" I whispered I did not do anything wrong, but the words hit the windshield and fell dead. They accused me of jealousy, claiming I wanted to ruin Mason's reputation. I felt my breath breaking inside my chest like thin glass. When we reached home, they told me I was grounded indefinitely. No school, no clubs, no studying outside my room, until I apologized to Mason. I froze, staring at them, thinking this cannot be real. Mason leaned against the wall, arms crossed, enjoying every second. They repeated the order 3 times, waiting for me to bow down. But something inside me finally cracked in a different way. I said I will not apologize because I am not lying. My mother looked at me like I had committed a crime larger than anything Mason ever did. My father yelled that I was banned from stepping out to school until I apologized. My future felt like a door slamming shut, but I held my ground. I walked to my room quietly as they shouted behind me. When the door closed, the silence felt like a soft my chest. My room looked the same, but it no longer felt safe. I sat on the floor thinking about everything I had worked for: debate competitions, honors classes, dreams bigger than this small house, and I realized that staying under their control meant losing everything I loved. I lay down, staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint, as if they could give me answers. Night came slow and heavy, and I heard Mason celebrating in the next room, telling his friends how easy it was to get me in trouble. His laughter seeped through the wall like poison. I felt my body shake with anger, but also with determination I did not know I had. I knew I needed a way out, a door, a chance, anything that would pull me from this darkness. My mind drifted to what my counselor had once told me about scholarships for students facing unstable homes. The memory lit a spark inside my heart. I sat up, grabbed my old laptop, and opened it slowly, praying it would turn on. The screen flickered and lit up, casting a blue glow across my room like a small beginning. I typed boarding school scholarships, Washington, D.C., almost without thinking. And in that moment, the smallest seed of freedom began to grow inside me. The blue light from my laptop felt like the only warm thing in the room that night. I scrolled through pages of scholarships, reading each requirement carefully, while my heartbeat whispered, "Hurry, hurry." Most programs needed parental approval, and that made my chest sink like a stone. But then one link caught my eye: a prestigious residential academy in Washington, D.C., offering full scholarships without parental involvement for students facing unsafe or unstable environments. My hands trembled as I clicked the page, feeling the world shift slightly under my feet. The pictures showed tall brick buildings, shining hallways, green fields, and students who looked focused, confident, free. I imagined myself walking there, breathing air that did not carry disappointment or fear. The application required essays, grades, recommendation letters, and a personal statement explaining why I needed the opportunity. I read everything twice, then again, slowly, holding each word like a fragile hope. A part of me whispered, "What if you fail?" But another voice, stronger, said, "What if you do not?" I opened a blank document and stared at the empty white screen, feeling my thoughts swirl. Then the words began to pour out of me, like water breaking through a dam. I wrote about the pressure, the silence, the way my childhood was shaped around someone else's light. I wrote about school being my refuge, my ambition being my compass, and my dreams being bigger than the walls around me. I did not blame my parents, I simply told the truth, the quiet truth, the kind that hurts more because it is gentle. The essay stretched longer than I expected, carrying pieces of me I had never said out loud. When it was done, I read it 3 times, the sentences trembling like I was looking at my own heart on the screen. Next, I needed recommendation letters, and I knew only one teacher would truly understand. My English teacher, Mrs. Carter, who always said my words carried weight, even when I did not believe in them. I sent her a long message explaining I needed a confidential recommendation because I was applying on my own. I did not tell her everything, but I told her enough for her to know I needed help. The next morning she replied saying meet me after school, even though I was grounded and not supposed to be there. I slipped out quietly while my parents argued in the kitchen about Mason's latest stunt. I walked to school fast, breathing cold morning air like I was running toward my last chance. Mrs. Carter was waiting in her classroom, warm smile, soft eyes, desk covered in papers. She asked me gently what was going on, and I felt tears remain on the edge but not fall. I told her I needed a way out, and school was the only door I could see ahead. She listened without interrupting, the kind of listening that feels like safety. She said, "I will write your letter tonight, and it will be honest, strong, and true." Her words felt like a blanket wrapping around the broken pieces inside me. She handed me printed copies of my grades and achievements, saying, "You earned all of this, do not forget that." I held the papers tight, afraid they might fly away with the wind. On the way home, I kept looking over my shoulder, thinking my parents might appear screaming, but the streets stayed empty. When I reached my house, I slipped back through the side door quietly, heart racing like a drum. My parents were not paying attention, they were too busy praising Mason for something small he had done. I went upstairs and hid the papers under my mattress like they were treasure maps. That night, I worked on the rest of the application, writing slowly, carefully, choosing each word like a stepping stone. Uploaded documents, my hands shaking, afraid of making any mistake. At midnight, everything was ready except one thing, the personal video introduction. Stared at the camera for a long time, afraid to speak. Then I pressed record and told them who I was, not the shadow my family painted, but the girl who wanted a future. I talked about leadership, ambition, kindness, and the courage it takes to keep going when the world keeps shrinking around you. When the video ended, I sat on the edge of my bed, breathing deeply as if I had climbed a mountain. I uploaded it and clicked submit, and the tiny spinning circle felt like my whole life balancing on its edge. After it finished, my laptop screen faded back to quiet blue, and everything in the room felt different, slightly lighter. I closed the laptop and whispered a small prayer to the darkness, asking for a chance. Sleep came slow and restless, but for the first time in days, I felt a small flame burning inside me. Morning light slipped through the curtains, waking me softly like a promise. I lay there imagining what my life could look like, far from this house, far from the weight on my shoulders, and deep inside I felt something shift. I felt hope, learning how to breathe again. The next few days moved slowly like thick cold syrup, and every hour felt like waiting for something unseen. My parents kept me locked inside the house, repeating their rule: no school until you apologize to Mason. They believed control was love and silence was obedience, and I was supposed to live by their script. But I no longer felt like the same girl who used to bend under their words. I carried a secret, now a small seed of possibility growing quietly in my heart. My parents thought keeping me away from school should break me, but it only made my determination sharper. I used the long hours in my room to imagine a life far from these walls, far from the constant comparison. Mason bragged loudly about being the favorite, walking around the house like he owned the air we breathed. Every time he passed my door, he tapped it lightly, mocking, reminding me he had won this round. But he had no idea I was preparing to leave a battle much bigger than any fight he started. On the fourth day, an email notification lit up my screen. The school had received my application. They scheduled an interview and offered 3 possible dates, all online, all confidential. My breath trembled with excitement and fear, because this was the first real step toward escape. I picked the earliest date and marked it carefully on a scrap paper I hid under my pillow. I practiced speaking answers in whispers, making my voice steady even when my hands shook. Some nights I stood in front of the mirror practicing eye contact, telling myself I could do this. I had never been taught confidence at home, so I had to build it from scratch, piece by piece. The morning of the interview, my parents argued downstairs over who spoiled Mason more, and their voices echoed through the halls. I quietly closed my door, placed pillows against the bottom crack to muffle sound. I sat with my laptop on my desk, heart pounding like thunder, trapped inside a small space. When the screen lit up, the interviewer appeared, an older woman with kind eyes and a calm presence. She greeted me softly and asked if I was ready, and I nodded even though my voice almost fled. The interview felt like stepping into light after living in shadows too long. She asked about my goals, my passion for learning, my leadership experiences. I answered as honestly as I could, telling her how education had been my escape and my anchor. I told her about debate competitions, about tutoring younger students, about wanting to create change in communities like mine. She listened carefully, as if every word mattered, and that alone felt like a miracle. Then she gently asked why I needed a residential academy, and my throat tightened. I breathed slowly and told her without bitterness, without anger, that my home environment had become unstable. I said I needed a place where my education could continue without obstruction. Her eyes softened and she nodded, not asking for painful details, but understanding enough. At the end of the interview, she smiled and said, "Thank you for your honesty and resilience." When the call ended, I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed by relief. It felt like someone had finally seen the real me, the part one kept hidden to survive. I closed the laptop, hugged my knees, and let a quiet breath escape. That small breath felt like claiming a piece of freedom. Hours passed, and I slipped back into the routine of silence whenever my parents were near. They complained constantly about my refusal to apologize, saying they did everything for me. Mason pretended to be innocent, but his smirk never truly left his face. I began packing a few things secretly little by little so no one would notice. Books I loved, sweaters that felt safe, pictures of moments when I looked happy. Each item went into a small suitcase hidden under my bed, waiting for the day I would walk away. Nights grew longer and heavier, but inside me something kept growing, something stubborn. I stayed awake imagining looking out a dorm room window in Washington, D.C., watching city lights instead of this house. I imagined walking across a campus where no one shouted my name in anger. I imagined becoming someone stronger than every lie ever told about me. The waiting was the hardest part, but hope kept me standing. Days later, a new email arrived saying final decision coming soon, and my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. I pressed my forehead against my knees, whispering, "Please let this be my chance," because I knew if I stayed here much longer I would lose myself completely. Morning came with a strange stillness, and I felt something shifting in the air before I even opened my eyes. Sunlight slipped through the curtains in thin lines, and for a moment I allowed myself to breathe slowly. I reached for my laptop with shaky hands, hoping for news, hoping for something that would change everything. When the screen lit up, I saw a new email notification, waiting quietly like a heartbeat. I clicked it slowly, afraid and hopeful at the same time. The first word I saw was "Congratulations," and the world around me blurred. My chest tightened and my vision wavered, as if the air was suddenly too bright to hold. I read the letter again and again, unable to believe that it was real. They had accepted me to the academy in Washington, D.C., with a full scholarship covering everything. Tuition, housing, meals, travel, mentorship, all provided without any parental approval. They wrote that my interview showed strength, potential, and resilience beyond my years. Tears gathered in my eyes, but they did not fall. I simply sat there trembling with silent joy. For the first time, I felt the world opening instead of closing. Freedom was no longer a wish, it was a date, it was a destination, it was a door waiting for me. I clutched the laptop against my chest, feeling my heartbeat pounding through the metal. I whispered thank you to no one in particular, just to the universe maybe. But the moment of peace ended quickly when footsteps approached my door. My mother burst into my room without knocking, holding her phone, waving it angrily. She yelled that the school had called, saying I had missed days repeatedly. She demanded to know why I was still refusing to apologize. I stood still, quietly knowing that my answer would not matter to her. My father joined her, voice rising, blaming me for ruining everything they worked for. Mason stood behind them with folded arms, pretending to be innocent but smiling slightly. Normally, I would have stayed silent, but something inside me had changed forever. I said calmly, "I will not apologize because I did nothing wrong." My mother called it disrespect, my father called it stubbornness. They told me I was grounded even longer, and my future was in their hands. I almost laughed because they no longer knew how wrong they were. I looked at them, feeling a strange calm settle inside me like the eye of a storm. I said softly, "My future is not in your hands anymore." They froze, confused, anger flickering into fear and disbelief. Mason scoffed, saying, "She is lying, she cannot go anywhere without us." I opened my laptop, turned it toward them, and showed the acceptance letter. My mother's eyes widened, my father's jaw tightened, Mason's smirk vanished instantly. They stared at the screen, unable to speak because the words were undeniable. My mother said, "No, you are not going anywhere," and tried to shut the laptop. I held it firmly, saying, "This scholarship is legal and independent, you cannot stop me." My father raised his voice, but I no longer felt afraid of the sound. It echoed around the room like an old threat that had lost its power. I told them my travel papers would arrive in the mail, and I would leave as soon as they did. My mother screamed, saying I was abandoning the family. I replied, "You abandoned me long before I ever thought about leaving." For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy and sharp. 44, Mason muttered that I thought I was better than them. I whispered, "Not better, just done being blamed for everything you do." They stormed out of my room, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I listened to their angry voices downstairs, but none of the words reached me anymore. I sat on my bed, breathing slow, steady breaths, letting the truth sink in. I was leaving this house, this pain, this smallness behind forever. And for the first time in my life, I felt the beginning of freedom in my hands. The morning felt heavier than usual as I walked out of my room, knowing the suspension was still hanging over me like a silent punishment. The house was filled with the same old routine sounds, the humming fridge, the distant traffic, the quiet tension no one wanted to talk about. I moved toward the kitchen, hoping for a moment of peace before anyone woke up and started another storm. The table still had crumbs from last night when Dylan bragged about how Mom and Dad believed his fake story again. I kept staring at the crumbs, thinking how strange it felt to live in a place where lies got rewarded and truth was constantly punished. I grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter, letting myself breathe and reminding myself that my future was bigger than this house. Suddenly, I remembered the email from the academy, and a calm confidence settled inside me like a new voice whispering, "You are leaving soon." I opened my laptop and read the message again. The words "full scholarship" felt unreal but powerful. I wondered how it would feel to live somewhere no one knew my family, and no one cared about Dylan or his drama. Somewhere I could be the person I always tried to become before the house crushed me down again and again. As I kept planning, I heard footsteps upstairs and knew someone had woken up, but I did not rush or hide what I was doing. For the first time, I felt like they had no real control left over me because the law was on my side. And that thought alone brought a strange warmth to my chest, something like relief or maybe early freedom. I folded the letter from the academy and placed it inside my bag, as if protecting a treasure no one else deserved to touch. Then I checked the bus schedule for the next day because I wanted to visit the local office and submit everything officially. The idea of leaving this house forever felt bigger and brighter every minute. I wondered how my parents would react when they realized they could not stop me, not this time. They would yell and accuse and twist every detail, but none of that mattered anymore because my path was already set. My hands trembled a little, but not from fear, from the thrill of finally choosing myself. I looked around the kitchen and felt detached, like this place was shrinking behind me, already fading into old memories. The fridge covered in Dylan's achievement stickers, the counters where Mom always lectured me, the windows where silence lived. All of it felt temporary for the first time, like something I was only passing through. I walked to the living room and saw Dylan's backpack tossed carelessly on the couch, the same couch where I spent nights crying quietly. I stared at it and felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a distance so clean it surprised me. It meant I was finally letting go of trying to be understood in this house that refused to see me. I returned to my room and opened my closet to choose the few clothes I would pack for the academy. My wardrobe was small because my parents always bought Dylan new things while telling me to be simple and grateful. I smiled to myself because I knew I would soon buy my own clothes with my own scholarship money in my own new city. I packed a few shirts and jeans, folding them carefully as if each fold was a promise to myself. Then I pulled out the debate trophies I kept hidden under my bed because Dylan used to smash anything that made him jealous. I touched them and whispered to myself that none of his lies could erase what I had earned. My heart felt lighter as I placed the trophies safely in the bag. The room looked different now, half empty, half ready for a new life. I sat at the edge of my bed and closed my eyes, imagining the moment I would step out of this house for the last time. No apology, no begging, no guilt, just a silent walk toward a future I carved alone. I knew they would panic when they discovered my plan, but their panic was not my responsibility anymore. Maybe for once they would realize what losing a daughter who gave them everything truly felt like. The morning air grew softer as I breathed deeply and allowed hope to settle inside me like sunlight slowly filling a room. I stood up stronger than before, knowing today was another step toward my escape. I grabbed my notebook and double-checked my list, determined not to leave anything behind that mattered. Everything else, the pain, the yelling, the favoritism, I was more than happy to leave behind. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and for the first time in years I recognized myself. A girl who was finally choosing freedom over fear and future over family chains. The house was still quiet when I stepped back into the hallway carrying the bag I had partially packed the night before. The silence felt different today, not heavy, not suffocating, almost like the walls knew I was getting ready to leave them behind. I walked slowly, taking in every detail of the place I had once called home, even though it never truly felt like one. I touched the railing of the stairs, remembering all the times I ran down them to help with chores while Dylan slept in peacefully. Those memories no longer hurt me, they felt distant, like watching scenes from someone else's life. I headed to the living room where the morning light fell across the carpet in soft stripes. The couch was messy and piled with Dylan's clothes and game controllers, because no one ever told him to pick up after himself. I stared at the mess and felt a deep clarity forming inside me that I never wanted to live in a home where effort meant nothing. I walked over to the bookshelf where Mom kept framed photos of us as kids, smiling in matching outfit. I lifted one of the frames and studied the girl I used to be, the one who still believed she could earn love by being perfect. I gently put it back, knowing that girl had grown into someone stronger than she ever imagined. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, and for once it did not make me anxious, it just reminded me that time was moving forward, and so was I. I went to the kitchen to make tea because I wanted to sit down and plan the rest of my departure with a clear mind. The kettle boiled, and I watched the steam rise, feeling my thoughts lift with it. I sat at the table and opened my notebook again, reading the list I had made for the academy. Every item felt like a stepping stone leading me away from years of being controlled and silenced. I added new things like buying a train ticket, maybe packing warmer clothes for DC winters. I imagined myself walking through the academy halls confident and unafraid, with no one comparing me to a golden boy. The thought filled my chest with a warmth I had not felt in years. I sipped my tea slowly, letting the peace of the moment settle into my bones. Just then I heard Dylan's door slam upstairs, followed by his loud footsteps. Normally that sound made me tense, but today I felt nothing but calm. I continued writing in my notebook while he stomped around like he always did, demanding attention without ever earning it. He shouted something across the hallway, but I did not even try to understand his words. His voice no longer had power over me. I finished my tea and stood up, walking back to my room with a steady certainty that surprised even me. I pulled out the second suitcase from under my bed and placed it on the floor, deciding to pack more things in case the academy allowed early move-in. I folded sweaters and tucked them neatly inside, thinking about how different my nights would be living in a dorm instead of here. I imagined the quiet hum of students studying, the sound of pages, turning, the comfort of people who believed in ambition. As I packed, I found old debate notes and practice speeches filled with ideas and passion. I wrote a few lines and felt proud of the person I had become despite everything. It reminded me of all the times I won competitions while my parents barely reacted, as if my success was routine. Yet a single minor achievement from Dylan got him gifts, praise, and celebrations. I folded the papers and put them in the suitcase, determined never again to shrink myself to make space for someone who did not care. I opened the small drawer near my bed and took out the envelope containing the Academy scholarship documents. I held it to my chest for a moment, feeling gratitude not toward my parents but toward myself for surviving long enough to reach this point. The sunlight hit my face through the window, and for a second it felt like encouragement, like the universe whispering, "Keep going." I zipped up the suitcase and placed it next to the first one, both standing like quiet symbols of my future. My room felt lighter now, as if it too was ready for me to leave. I sat on the floor, leaning against the bed, and closed my eyes, taking a long breath. For the first time I allowed myself to feel excited without guilt. I pictured the moment I would walk out the door, forever carrying my bags and carrying my courage. I imagined the look on my parents' faces when they realized I had chosen my own path without waiting for their permission. And the thought did not scare me, it strengthened me. I stood up again and checked my list, making sure everything was accounted for. Every tick mark felt like cutting another chain that had held me down for too long. I opened the window and let the fresh morning air fill my room, washing away years of tension. This was not a small decision, this was the first step of my new life. A life where I would succeed because of myself, not in spite of my own family. And as I stood there in that quiet room, I knew without any doubt that I was never going back to being the girl they tried to break. I woke up the next morning before the sun had fully risen, feeling a strange mix of calm and unstoppable determination. My alarm buzzed softly, but I was already awake, already ready to take the next step toward leaving this house for good. I sat up and looked around my room at the packed bags standing like quiet guardians of my future. For years I felt trapped here, but today the air felt different, lighter, freer, like the walls no longer held power over me. I got dressed slowly, choosing clothes that made me feel strong, because today was the day I would visit the academy office. I brushed my hair and looked at myself in the mirror, seeing someone who had survived far more than anyone at school ever knew. Someone who deserved every opportunity coming her way. I opened my door quietly and stepped into the hallway where the house still slept, unaware of the changes happening right under its roof. The floor creaked under my feet, but I did not flinch. This house could not intimidate me anymore. I made my way to the kitchen where the early morning light cast a soft glow across the counter. I prepared a quick breakfast because I needed my energy and I wanted to stay focused. No one was awake yet, not my parents, not Dylan, and for the first time I felt grateful for the silence. I sat at the table and took out the scholarship documents, reading them one more time just to feel that rush of hope again. Every line reminded me that the academy believed in me, even if my own family never could. After finishing my breakfast, I checked my bag to make sure I had everything: my ID, my paperwork, my notebooks. I placed the envelope in a safe pocket and closed the zipper gently, as if locking away my new life until the moment I needed to reveal it. The clock on the wall ticked softly, marking each second as I prepared to make one of the biggest steps of my life. I grabbed my jacket and slipped it on, feeling the weight of the fabric settle around my shoulders like armor. The bus schedule I had written down was in my pocket, so I pulled it out and reviewed it again. The nearest stop was a 10-minute walk, and I planned to leave before anyone in the house woke up and tried to interfere. I walked to the front door quietly, my heart steady, strong, ready. I placed my hand on the doorknob and took a breath, not of fear but of freedom. When I opened the door, the crisp morning air washed over me like a promise that the world outside this house was bigger and brighter. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me with a finality that felt almost symbolic. As I walked down the driveway, I did not look back, not even once, because I knew looking back would only pull me into old patterns. The street was calm, with only a few early birds flying overhead and the soft hum of distant traffic. Each step felt meaningful, like I was walking toward a future I had been building quietly for years. I reached the bus stop and sat down, the bench cold under me but comforting somehow. I watched the sunrise spill across the sky, turning everything golden, making the moment feel unreal. When the bus approached, I stood up with my bag secure on my shoulder, ready to face whatever came next. I boarded the bus and found a seat near the window, watching the familiar neighborhood fade behind me. My heart beat steadily, not with fear, but with courage and anticipation. The ride was smooth and quiet, giving me time to think about how far I had come. I imagined the academy classrooms, the teachers, the dorm rooms, the new friendships waiting for me. The thought of starting over somewhere far away from favoritism and lies filled me with a hope I could almost touch. When the bus reached downtown, I stepped off and looked around at the tall buildings shining in the morning sun. I followed the directions I had written last night, walking confidently toward the academy office building. The building stood tall with glass windows reflecting the sky, making it look welcoming and powerful. I walked inside the lobby, where everything smelled new, clean, organized, nothing like the chaos of my home. A receptionist greeted me with a warm smile and asked how she could help me. I told her I was there to finalize my scholarship procedures, and she directed me to the elevator. My hands trembled slightly as I pressed the elevator button, but it was a good kind of trembling, the kind that comes before dreams turning real. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside, feeling like I was entering a new chapter. The doors closed and I watched the floor numbers rise, each one bringing me closer to my life, beyond this house, beyond this family. When the elevator opened, I stepped out into a quiet hallway leading to the admissions office. I walked toward the door with the academy emblem shining proudly on the front, feeling a deep surge of determination. I knocked gently and a voice said, "Come in." I opened the door and stepped inside, ready to say my name, ready to claim the future I fought so hard for. This was the moment everything changed. And as I stood there facing the people who believed in my potential, I knew I would never again let anyone dim my light. "Who?" The admissions officer smiled warmly and gestured for me to sit down across from her. I set my bag on the floor and took a deep breath, letting the morning light fill me with courage. She asked me to introduce myself, and I spoke clearly, confident, not hiding my story or my strength. I told her about my achievements, my debate awards, my volunteer work, my academic recording. I told her about my dreams and my determination to make a difference in the world. She listened carefully, nodding and taking notes, but her eyes never judged or doubted me. When she asked why I needed the scholarship, I spoke honestly without hesitation. I explained that my home environment was restrictive, unfair, and that I needed a place where I could thrive. I did not blame anyone, I simply told the truth as it was. My words felt heavy and light at the same time, heavy because they carried years of unspoken pain, light because I finally released them. She smiled again and said she admired my resilience and maturity. She asked about my goals, and I described the kind of impact I wanted to have on my community, on education, on policy. I spoke passionately because for the first time I knew my words had weight, without fear of being punished for honesty. I could feel every heartbeat resonating in my chest and in my hands. She asked about my family, and I answered calmly, explaining the truth without anger or resentment. I spoke about Dylan, my parents, and the challenges of being overlooked and misjudged. I told her how this scholarship represented a chance to finally be seen and heard. She nodded and said she understood and would make sure my application reflected everything I shared. I felt a rush of relief, like a heavy weight lifting from my shoulders. She asked me if I had any questions about the academy, and I asked about dorms, classrooms, clubs, and mentorship opportunities. She answered every question patiently and enthusiastically, showing me a side of education I had never imagined. I could feel myself smiling genuinely for the first time in weeks. After the interview, she said she would submit her recommendation immediately and that I would receive official confirmation within a week. I stood up, thanked her, and walked out of the office feeling lighter, stronger, unstoppable. The sun was higher now, and the city buzzed with life, but none of it intimidated me. I felt like I belonged somewhere, and that somewhere was waiting for me to arrive. I walked down the street toward the bus stop, thinking about the first day I would wake up in my new dorm room. I imagined opening my window, seeing the city lights stretching far beyond anything I had ever known. I imagined meeting other students, driven, passionate, full of ideas and energy. I imagined walking into classrooms where my contributions mattered, where my voice had value. I thought about the freedom of living without constant comparisons, without favoritism, without fear. When the bus arrived, I boarded calmly with my bags and found a window seat. I looked out at the streets passing by, watching neighborhoods fade into the distance. Each block felt like a step away from old chains, a step toward a life I built for myself. I thought about my parents and how they would react when they realized I could not be stopped. But I did not feel anger or revenge, only a quiet satisfaction that I finally chose myself. I closed my eyes and let the motion of the bus calm me, imagining the academy growing closer with every mile. I pictured walking through the campus gates, meeting new teachers, new friends, and mentors. I imagined studying late into the night without interruption or unfair criticism. I pictured myself speaking in debates, being recognized for my skill and passion, not my family name. I pictured a life where my effort mattered and my success was mine alone. The bus ride seemed short as my excitement grew with every passing street. When we arrived downtown, I stepped off and felt the wind on my face, welcoming me into the city. The Academy building was taller and more impressive up close, shining like a beacon. I walked inside and the lobby felt organized, safe, welcoming, and full of possibility. I approached the receptionist desk and smiled, feeling that strange mix of nerves and confidence. I told her I was there to follow up on my scholarship paperwork, and she guided me to the correct office. I walked down the hallway with my head held high, feeling each step carry me closer to freedom. And as I reached the office door, I knocked and whispered to myself, "This is my moment, my life begins now." I opened the door slowly and stepped into the office, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and calm. The admissions officer looked up and smiled, as if she already knew how much I deserved this opportunity. I placed my bags on the floor and sat down across from her, feeling lighter than I had in years. She asked if I was ready to finalize everything, and I nodded with steady confidence. I handed her all the documents I had packed, checking my hands were not shaking too badly. She looked through each form carefully, while I watched and felt my chest tighten with anticipation. Every page she glanced at felt like proof that I had earned this moment despite the struggles at home. She asked a few clarifying questions about my personal statement, and I answered honestly without hesitation. I felt proud to speak my truth without anyone interrupting or dismissing me. She smiled again and said that my acceptance was now official and that the Academy could not wait to welcome me. I could hardly believe it. My heart raced and tears threatened to spill, but I held them back. The reality was finally sinking in. I was going to leave my old life behind forever. I packed the envelope of signed documents carefully back into my bag, knowing it symbolized a new beginning. She explained the next steps, including orientation schedules, travel arrangements, and what I needed to bring. I listened carefully, taking notes, trying to memorize every word. I realized this was the first time in my life that someone treated me like I truly mattered. No comparisons, no favoritism, no lies, just respect for what I had accomplished. I thanked her repeatedly, even though words felt small against the weight of this moment. She wished me luck and reminded me that this was only the beginning of an incredible journey. I left the office with a strange sense of lightness, my steps feeling steady and purposeful. Outside the building, the city was alive with noise and movement, but it felt different somehow. I felt like I belonged here already, and that this city would be the backdrop of my transformation. I walked toward the bus stop, imagining the first night in my dorm room, unpacking my things. I pictured meeting students who shared my drive and ambition, who would challenge me and inspire me. I thought about the study sessions late at night and the laughter and conversations that would fill the halls. I thought about the future policy projects and debates where my voice would finally be heard. Every thought filled me with a deep sense of freedom and excitement. When the bus arrived, I boarded calmly, placing my bag securely beside me. I looked out the window, watching the streets pass, and felt the distance between my old life and new life grow. Each block felt like a step closer to being the person I had always wanted to be. I imagined walking across campus, seeing the iconic brick buildings and lush green fields. I imagined dorm rooms filled with books and laughter where I could finally be myself. I pictured classrooms where teachers listened and valued my ideas and my perspective. I imagined debates where my arguments were judged on skill, not on family reputation. I felt a surge of confidence, knowing this was a place where my hard work and talent would be recognized. The city wind brushed my face as the bus approached my stop downtown. I stepped off feeling my feet firmly on the ground, yet my heart soaring with anticipation. I walked toward the academy building, using the directions I had memorized. The glass doors reflected the sunlight, making the building shine like a promise. I entered the lobby and felt the security and organization of this place embrace me like a welcome. I followed signs carefully to the admissions office, feeling like every step was a step toward freedom. When I reached the office door, I paused briefly, taking a deep breath. I knocked and whispered to myself that nothing from my old life could stop me now. The door opened and I stepped inside with courage filling every inch of my body. The officer looked up and waved me in her smile, warm and encouraging. I sat down and felt my bag at my feet like a bridge between the past and my new life. She greeted me warmly and said, "Today we make everything official." I handed her the final forms and documents, my hands steady, confident, and proud. She reviewed them carefully and signed the last page confirming my enrollment. And as I stood up and shook her hand, I felt it fully. This was my life, my choice, and no one could take it away. I stepped out of the admissions office feeling as if the world itself had shifted to make space for me. The sun was higher now, and the city streets bustled, but I felt calm, confident, and free. I held my bag close, knowing it carried not only my belongings but my dreams and hard work. For years I had felt invisible and trapped, but today I walked with purpose and clarity. Each step toward the bus stop felt lighter and stronger, as if I was shedding old fears with every movement. I remembered the countless nights I stayed up studying, competing, and proving myself to no one who appreciated it. All of that effort had led me here, and now it finally mattered. I pictured the academy campus, the towering buildings, the green fields, and students bustling with ambition. I imagined the dorm room where I would unpack my suitcase and finally feel at home. I thought about the late-night study sessions, the new friends and mentors who would inspire me. Every detail filled me with excitement and a deep sense of relief. The bus arrived and I boarded quickly, taking a seat by the window, watching the city move past me. I felt like a traveler on the edge of a new world, leaving behind the weight of my old life. Each street we passed felt like a marker of distance from the house where lies and favoritism ruled. I imagined my parents discovering I could not be stopped, and for a moment I smiled quietly to myself. I did not feel anger or revenge, only quiet satisfaction and peace. I looked out the window at the sunlight reflecting on buildings and trees, feeling every ray like a promise. I planned my first few days at the academy, picturing the library, the classrooms, and the debate halls. I imagined conversations where my voice mattered and my skills were recognized. I pictured studying late into the night, without interruption, without judgment, without favoritism. I stepped out of the admissions office feeling as if the world itself had shifted to make space for me. The sun was higher now, and the city streets bustled, but I felt calm, confident, and free. I held my bag close, knowing it carried not only my belongings but my dreams and hard work. For years I had felt invisible and trapped, but today I walked with purpose and clarity. Each step toward the bus stop felt lighter and stronger, as if I was shedding old fears with every movement. I remembered the countless nights I stayed up studying, competing, and proving myself to no one who appreciated it. All of that effort had led me here, and now it finally mattered. I pictured the academy campus, the towering buildings, the green fields, and students bustling with ambition. I imagined the dorm room where I would unpack my suitcase and finally feel at home. I thought about the late-night study sessions, the new friends and mentors who would inspire me. Every detail filled me with excitement and a deep sense of relief. The bus arrived and I boarded quickly, taking a seat by the window, watching the city move past me. I felt like a traveler on the edge of a new world, leaving behind the weight of my old life. Each street we passed felt like a marker of distance from the house where lies and favoritism ruled. I imagined my parents discovering I could not be stopped, and for a moment I smiled quietly to myself. I did not feel anger or revenge, only quiet satisfaction and peace. I looked out the window at the sunlight reflecting on buildings and trees, feeling every ray like a promise. I planned my first few days at the academy, picturing the library, the classrooms, and the debate halls. I imagined conversations where my voice mattered and my skills were recognized. I pictured studying late into the night, without interruption, without judgment, without favoritism. Each thought made my chest swell with freedom and anticipation. When the bus approached downtown, I gathered my belongings and stood up with steady resolve. I stepped off and walked toward the academy building, following the directions I memorized. The building loomed tall, glass reflecting the morning sun, making it shine like an invitation. I walked into the lobby, feeling the organization's security and calm envelop me. I approached the receptionist desk and told her I was here for my enrollment confirmation. She smiled and directed me to the office with clear instructions that made me feel welcome and capable. I walked down the hallway with confidence, feeling the weight of my old life lift with every step. When I reached the office door, I paused, taking a deep breath, letting myself feel how far I had come. I knocked and opened the door, hearing the friendly greeting that welcomed me to the next stage of my life. I placed my bags down and shook hands with the officer who had already prepared my paperwork. She walked me through the final steps of enrollment, confirming my room assignment, orientation, and schedule. I listened carefully, committing every word to memory, feeling the reality of my future solidifying. I signed the final forms, knowing that this act marked the end of one chapter and the start of another. I stood up, handed over the last document, and felt a rush of pride and accomplishment. She congratulated me and said she could not wait to see all the great things I would accomplish. I thanked her and smiled, genuinely feeling the weight of years of struggle lift from my shoulders. I picked up my bags and walked toward the lobby, feeling each step solid and purposeful. The doors opened to the sunlight and city noise, feeling like a celebration just for me. I took a deep breath and stepped fully into my new world, leaving fear and doubt behind. The streets were alive and vibrant, but nothing intimidated me anymore. I felt ready to meet new classmates, teachers, and challenges with confidence and courage. I imagined walking across campus, the grass beneath my feet and buildings rising around me, feeling at home. I pictured my dorm room, the books and papers neatly arranged, the comfort of space that belonged entirely to me. I imagined the first night, sleeping peacefully for the first time in years without tension and fear. I felt a surge of gratitude for myself for surviving and persevering and making this opportunity real. I knew the journey would not be easy, but I was ready to face it with determination. Each step forward was a step toward independence, growth, and fulfillment. I smiled quietly, knowing that this was the first day of the life I had worked so hard to create. And as I looked up at the academy, I knew without any doubt that nothing could ever hold me back again. The first few days at the academy felt like stepping into a dream I had always imagined but never dared to believe. I unpacked my suitcase, carefully arranging books, clothes, and personal items in my dorm room. The room was small but bright, and every corner felt like a fresh start. I ran my fingers over the textbooks on my desk, thinking about all the knowledge I would gain here. The hallways echoed with the footsteps of students moving between classes and activities. Every face I saw was unfamiliar but full of energy and purpose. I realized that here no one cared about who I was at home, only who I chose to be. I smiled quietly, knowing that for the first time my past would not define me. Orientation began with introductions and explanations of rules, schedules, and resources. I listened carefully, absorbing every word, understanding that this was a place designed to empower me. I met other students who shared their stories and ambitions, feeling a sense of belonging I had never known. We walked through the campus, visiting classrooms, libraries, and labs, imagining all the projects we would work on. Each room felt like a promise of growth and achievement. I felt my confidence growing as I realized that my hard work had brought me here and would carry me further. During lunch, I sat outside with new friends, discussing classes and goals and finding people who valued my ideas. It felt strange and wonderful to speak freely without fear of judgment or comparison. Every conversation reminded me how long I had waited for a place like this. I visited the debate hall, imagining myself speaking passionately in front of an audience who would listen. I thought about past competitions where my voice was silenced or ignored and smiled at how far I had come. Even the courtyard felt inspiring, green grass and sunlight making it easy to breathe freely. I began walking to the library, imagining nights spent studying late, feeling alive and motivated. The library was quiet and filled with resources that made me feel. I realized that education here was not a chore or obligation, but a tool to help me grow and thrive. I took notes, carefully absorbing every concept, eager to apply my knowledge. Every interaction with classmates and teachers reinforced the truth that I belonged here. No one judged me for my past, they only valued my present and my potential. I felt proud of myself for surviving and strong for taking control of my future. As the day ended, I walked back to my dorm, reflecting on how far I had come and how much awaited me. I knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it with courage, determination, and grace. And as I closed my eyes that night, I felt truly free, alive, and finally in control of my own destiny. I realized that education here was not a chore or obligation, but a tool to help me grow and thrive. I took notes, carefully absorbing every concept, eager to apply my knowledge. Every interaction with classmates and teachers reinforced the truth that I belonged here. No one judged me for my past, they only valued my present and my potential. I felt proud of myself for surviving and strong for taking control of my future. As the day ended, I walked back to my dorm reflecting on how far I had come and how much awaited me. I knew the journey ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face it with courage, determination, and grace. And as I closed my eyes that night, I felt truly free, alive, and finally in control of my own destiny. The days passed quickly at the academy, and each morning I woke feeling more like myself than ever before. I walked across campus enjoying the crisp air and the sound of students chatting and laughing. Every corner of the campus seemed full of possibility and hope. I found myself smiling at small things, noticing details I had never appreciated before. The classrooms were bright and welcoming, filled with resources and people eager to help me grow. I began each class with determination, taking notes and participating actively. My classmates noticed my passion, and I felt recognized for the first time in my life. We formed study groups, sharing ideas and strategies, feeling like a team ready to achieve great things. During breaks, I walked the paths around the academy, imagining all the challenges I would overcome. Every step reinforced my sense of freedom and independence. The debate club became a place where my voice mattered and my arguments carried weight. I practiced speeches and strategies, feeling my confidence grow with each session. The mentors encouraged me to aim higher, and I realized that I had never allowed myself to dream this big. I thought about my parents and Dylan, but without bitterness, only as reminders of how far I had come. Every meal in the cafeteria became an opportunity to meet someone new, to learn and connect. I found friends who shared my curiosity and drive, making every conversation meaningful. Even simple walks across campus felt invigorating as I imagined the future stretching before me. The library became a sanctuary, a place where I could immerse myself in knowledge without interruption. I discovered books and research that expanded my mind and gave me tools for my goals. Each evening, I returned to my dorm proud of the accomplishments of the day. I unpacked additional items from my suitcase, organizing my room into a personal space of inspiration. I placed my trophies and certificates proudly on the shelf as symbols of perseverance. I began journaling about my experiences, recording my growth and the lessons I learned. Each entry reminded me that I was in control of my story for the first time. I thought about the moments of fear and injustice I had endured and realized they had made me stronger. The academy allowed me to use that strength productively, focusing on goals rather than grudges. During late-night study sessions, I found a rhythm and confidence that I had never experienced. I tackled challenging assignments and projects with focus and determination. Every success reinforced my belief in my abilities and my future. I began to see the trajectory of my life taking shape, guided by my choices, not the opinions of others. I started planning long-term goals, mapping how I could turn my education into impact. I imagined myself influencing policy, shaping programs, and leading initiatives that mattered. The thought filled me with purpose and excitement for the years to come. I found joy in small victories, the praise of teachers, the encouragement of mentors, and the respect of peers. I no longer needed approval from home, because here I was valued for who I truly was. Even when challenges arose, I faced them with calm and strategy, knowing I had the skills to overcome them. The dorm halls became familiar, comfortable, and full of supportive energy. I made friends who shared late-night conversations about dreams, struggles, and plans. We encouraged each other and celebrated accomplishments together, building a network of support. Each day, I felt my confidence and independence deepen, solidifying my new life. The city around the academy offered endless opportunities to explore and grow. I began learning to navigate it with ease, feeling capable and adventurous. Every morning walking to class, I felt a thrill of excitement, knowing I was living a life I chose. I reflected on how different this was from my old home, a place of restriction and favoritism. I realized that leaving had been the first courageous act that allowed all this to unfold. I felt gratitude not for anyone else, but for my own resilience and determination. Even the quiet moments in my dorm room felt rich with meaning and promise. I started thinking about future internships and projects, imagining myself making real change. Every plan reinforced the reality that I was now building a life of my own design. And as I lay in bed that night, I closed my eyes, feeling unstoppable, free, and ready to embrace every challenge ahead. The days passed quickly at the academy, and each morning I woke feeling more like myself than ever before. I walked across campus enjoying the crisp air and the sound of students chatting and laughing. Every corner of the campus seemed full of possibility and hope. I found myself smiling at small things, noticing details I had never appreciated before. The classrooms were bright and welcoming, filled with resources and people eager to help me grow. I began each class with determination, taking notes and participating actively. My classmates noticed my passion, and I felt recognized for the first time in my life. We formed study groups, sharing ideas and strategies, feeling like a team ready to achieve great things. During breaks, I walked the paths around the academy, imagining all the challenges I would overcome. Every step reinforced my sense of freedom and independence. The debate club became a place where my voice mattered and my arguments carried weight. I practiced speeches and strategies, feeling my confidence grow with each session. The mentors encouraged me to aim higher, and I realized that I had never allowed myself to dream this big. I thought about my parents and Dylan, but without bitterness, only as reminders of how far I had come. Every meal in the cafeteria became an opportunity to meet someone new, to learn and connect. I found friends who shared my curiosity and drive, making every conversation meaningful. Even simple walks across campus felt invigorating as I imagined the future stretching before me. The library became a sanctuary, a place where I could immerse myself in knowledge without interruption. I discovered books and research that expanded my mind and gave me tools for my goals. Each evening, I returned to my dorm proud of the accomplishments of the day. I unpacked additional items from my suitcase, organizing my room into a personal space of inspiration. I placed my trophies and certificates proudly on the shelf as symbols of perseverance. I began journaling about my experiences, recording my growth and the lessons I learned. Each entry reminded me that I was in control of my story for the first time. I thought about the moments of fear and injustice I had endured and realized they had made me stronger. The academy allowed me to use that strength productively, focusing on goals rather than grudges. During late-night study sessions, I found a rhythm and confidence that I had never experienced. I tackled challenging assignments and projects with focus and determination. Every success reinforced my belief in my abilities and my future. I began to see the trajectory of my life taking shape, guided by my choices, not the opinions of others. I started planning long-term goals, mapping how I could turn my education into impact. I imagined myself influencing policy, shaping programs, and leading initiatives that mattered. The thought filled me with purpose and excitement for the years to come. I found joy in small victories, the praise of teachers, the encouragement of mentors, and the respect of peers. I no longer needed approval from home, because here I was valued for who I truly was. Even when challenges arose, I faced them with calm and strategy, knowing I had the skills to overcome them. The dorm halls became familiar, comfortable, and full of supportive energy. I made friends who shared late-night conversations about dreams, struggles, and plans. We encouraged each other and celebrated accomplishments together, building a network of support. Each day, I felt my confidence and independence deepen, solidifying my new life. The city around the academy offered endless opportunities to explore and grow. I began learning to navigate it with ease, feeling capable and adventurous. Every morning walking to class, I felt a thrill of excitement, knowing I was living a life I chose. I reflected on how different this was from my old home, a place of restriction and favoritism. I realized that leaving had been the first courageous act that allowed all this to unfold. I felt gratitude not for anyone else but for my own resilience and determination. Even the quiet moments in my dorm room felt rich with meaning and promise. I started thinking about future internships and projects, imagining myself making real change. Every plan reinforced the reality that I was now building a life of my own design. And as I lay in bed that night, I closed my eyes, feeling unstoppable, free, and ready to embrace every challenge ahead. The days passed quickly at the academy, and each morning I woke feeling more like myself than ever before. I walked across campus, enjoying the crisp air and the sound of students chatting and laughing. Every corner of the campus seemed full of possibility and hope. I found myself smiling at small things, noticing details I had never appreciated before. The classrooms were bright and welcoming, filled with resources and people eager to help me grow. I began each class with determination, taking notes and participating actively. My classmates noticed my passion, and I felt recognized for the first time in my life. We formed study groups, sharing ideas and strategies, feeling like a team ready to achieve great things. During breaks, I walked the paths around the academy, imagining all the challenges I would overcome. Every step reinforced my sense of freedom and independence. The debate club became a place where my voice mattered and my arguments carried weight. I practiced speeches and strategies, feeling my confidence grow with each session. The mentors encouraged me to aim higher, and I realized that I had never allowed myself to dream this big. I thought about my parents and Dylan, but without bitterness, only as reminders of how far I had come. Every meal in the cafeteria became an opportunity to meet someone new, to learn and connect. I found friends who shared my curiosity and drive, making every conversation meaningful. Even simple walks across campus felt invigorating as I imagined the future stretching before me. The library became a sanctuary, a place where I could immerse myself in knowledge without interruption. I discovered books and research that expanded my mind and gave me tools for my goals. Each evening, I returned to my dorm proud of the accomplishments of the day. I unpacked additional items from my suitcase, organizing my room into a personal space of inspiration. I placed my trophies and certificates proudly on the shelf as symbols of perseverance. I began journaling about my experiences, recording my growth and the lessons I learned. Each entry reminded me that I was in control of my story for the first time. I thought about the moments of fear and injustice I had endured and realized they had made me stronger. The academy allowed me to use that strength productively, focusing on goals rather than grudges. During late-night study sessions, I found a rhythm and confidence that I had never experienced. I tackled challenging assignments and projects with focus and determinations. Every success reinforced my belief in my abilities and my future. I began to see the trajectory of my life taking shape, guided by my choices, not the opinions of others. I started planning long-term goals, mapping how I could turn my education into impact. I imagined myself influencing policy, shaping programs, and leading initiatives that mattered. The thought filled me with purpose and excitement for the years to come. I found joy in small victories, the praise of teachers, the encouragement of mentors, and the respect of peers. I no longer needed approval from home, because here I was valued for who I truly was. Even when challenges arose, I faced them with calm and strategy, knowing I had the skills to overcome them. The dorm halls became familiar, comfortable, and full of supportive energy. I made friends who shared late-night conversations about dreams, struggles, and plans. We encouraged each other and celebrated accomplishments together, building a network of support. Each day I felt my confidence and independence deepen, solidifying my new life. The city around the academy offered endless opportunities to explore and grow. I began learning to navigate it with ease, feeling capable and adventurous. Every morning walking to class, I felt a thrill of excitement, knowing I was living a life I chose. I reflected on how different this was from my old home, a place of restriction and favoritism. I realized that leaving had been the first courageous act that allowed all this to unfold. I felt gratitude not for anyone else but for my own resilience and determination. Even the quiet moments in my dorm room felt rich with meaning and promise. I started thinking about future internships and projects, imagining myself making real change. Every plan reinforced the reality that I was now building a life of my own design. And as I lay in bed that night, I closed my eyes, feeling unstoppable, free, and ready to embrace every challenge ahead. The days passed quickly at the academy, and each morning I woke feeling more like myself than ever before. I walked across campus, enjoying the crisp air and the sound of students chatting and laughing. Every corner of the campus seemed full of possibility and hope. I found myself smiling at small things, noticing details I had never appreciated before. The classrooms were bright and welcoming, filled with resources and people eager to help me grow. I began each class with determination, taking notes and participating actively. My classmates noticed my passion, and I felt recognized for the first time in my life. We formed study groups, sharing ideas and strategies, feeling like a team ready to achieve great things. During breaks, I walked the paths around the academy, imagining all the challenges I would overcome. Every step reinforced my sense of freedom and independence. The debate club became a place where my voice mattered and my arguments carried weight. I practiced speeches and strategies, feeling my confidence grow with each session. The mentors encouraged me to aim higher, and I realized that I had never allowed myself to dream this big. I thought about my parents and Dylan, but without bitterness, only as reminders of how far I had come. Every meal in the cafeteria became an opportunity to meet someone new, to learn and connect. I found friends who shared my curiosity and drive, making every conversation meaningful. Even simple walks across campus felt invigorating as I imagined the future stretching before me. The library became a sanctuary, a place where I could immerse myself in knowledge without interruption. I discovered books and research that expanded my mind and gave me tools for my goals. Each evening I returned to my dorm proud of the accomplishments of the day. I unpacked additional items from my suitcase, organizing my room into a personal space of inspiration. I placed my trophies and certificates proudly on the shelf as symbols of perseverance. I began journaling about my experiences, recording my growth and the lessons I learned. Each entry reminded me that I was in control of my story for the first time. I thought about the moments of fear and injustice I had endured and realized they had made me stronger. The Academy allowed me to use that strength productively, focusing on goals rather than grudges. During late-night study sessions, I found a rhythm and confidence that I had never experienced. I tackled challenging assignments and projects with focus and determination. Every success reinforced my belief in my abilities and my future. I began to see the trajectory of my life taking shape, guided by my choices, not the opinions of others. I started planning long-term goals, mapping how I could turn my education into impact. I imagined myself influencing policy-shaping programs and leading initiatives that mattered. The thought filled me with purpose and excitement for the years to come. I found joy in small victories, the praise of teachers, the encouragement of mentors, and the respect of peers. I no longer needed approval from home because here I was valued for who I truly was. Even when challenges arose, I faced them with calm and strategy, knowing I had the skills to overcome them. The dorm halls became familiar, comfortable, and full of supportive energy. I made friends who shared late-night conversations about dreams, struggles, and plans. We encouraged each other and celebrated accomplishments together, building a network of support. Each day I felt my confidence and independence deepen, solidifying my new life. The city around the Academy offered endless opportunities to explore and grow. I began learning to navigate it with ease, feeling capable and adventurous. Every morning walking to class, I felt a thrill of excitement, knowing I was living a life I chose. I reflected on how different this was from my old home, a place of restriction and favoritism. I realized that leaving had been the first courageous act that allowed all this to unfold. I felt gratitude not for anyone else but for my own resilience and determination. Even the quiet moments in my dorm room felt rich with meaning and promise. I started thinking about future internships and projects, imagining myself making real change. Every plan reinforced the reality that I was now building a life of my own design. And as I lay in bed that night, I closed my eyes, feeling unstoppable, free, and ready to embrace every challenge ahead. The morning light woke me gently, and I stretched, feeling energy and focus, ready for the day. I dressed quickly, choosing clothes that made me feel confident, capable, and prepared. The hallways buzzed with students moving to classes, and I felt excitement for the day ahead. I joined friends at breakfast, sharing stories, goals, and laughter, feeling part of a supportive community. Each conversation reminded me that my voice and effort mattered, and my past no longer held me back. After breakfast, I walked to my first class, appreciating the rhythm of my steps and the clarity in my mind. The lesson was engaging, challenging, and full of opportunities to learn and contribute. I took notes, carefully participating in discussions, feeling pride as my ideas were valued. The teacher encouraged questions and critical thinking, and I felt empowered to share my perspective. During a break, I stepped outside, breathing deeply, enjoying the fresh air and sunshine. I watched other students moving with purpose and felt a renewed sense of determination. The debate club met later, and I reviewed arguments, refining points and strengthening logic. When it was my turn to speak, I presented confidently, and the room responded with respect and attention. The debate was lively, thought-provoking, and exhilarating as I exchanged ideas with peers. My mentor gave feedback, highlighting strengths and guiding me toward improvement and growth. I realized that here effort, skill, and determination were valued above all else. I walked across campus, feeling the freedom and possibilities that came from making my own choices. Each step reminded me of the courage it took to leave my old life and embrace independence. Returning to my dorm, I felt accomplishment and motivation to continue striving for excellence. I organized study materials, reviewing notes and planning assignments for the evening. The city outside glimmered in the afternoon light, and I felt inspired by the opportunities around me. I reflected on my growth and resilience, feeling pride in the strength that carried me here. I journaled about experiences, lessons, and ambitions, solidifying focus and determination. Writing allowed me to process challenges and celebrate progress, fueling confidence. I imagined future achievements in debates, projects, and leadership roles, inspiring me to work harder. I felt purpose and excitement, knowing that every effort moved me closer to my goals. I reviewed the schedule for the next day, planning classes, study sessions, and extracurriculars carefully. I felt prepared, confident, and ready to face each challenge and opportunity. The dorm room felt like a sanctuary filled with motivation and inspiration. I arranged personal items and reminders of my journey to encourage resilience and focus. I thought about friends, mentors, and peers who supported me, feeling gratitude and connection. I meditated for a few minutes, centering my mind and preparing for focused work. I felt empowered knowing that my choices and efforts defined my life and future. Every class activity and interaction reinforced my confidence, independence, and agency. I imagined debates, policy projects, and initiatives where my work could make meaningful change. The possibilities energized me, strengthening my commitment and resolve. I planned to balance academics, extracurriculars, and personal growth, making each day productive and intentional. I felt joy in knowing that my effort and dedication would be recognized and valued. I reflected on the courage it took to leave home and how it had shaped my strength and resilience. I understood that every challenge I faced had prepared me to thrive at the academy. Evening arrived, and I reviewed accomplishments, setting goals for the next day with focus and clarity. I felt satisfaction in the progress made and excitement for continued growth and achievement. I prepared for rest, reflecting on the opportunities ahead and the journey that brought me here. I thought about mentors, friends, and experiences that would continue to guide and inspire me. I felt empowered, motivated, and ready to embrace challenges and adventures with courage. I took a final look around my dorm room, appreciating independence and space I had earned. I felt deep pride, fulfillment, and gratitude for my determination and resilience. I lay in bed, closing my eyes, imagining limitless possibilities and adventures ahead. I felt confident, capable, and prepared to seize every opportunity and overcome obstacles. And as sleep took me, I knew that each day at the academy was a step closer to the life I had always dreamed of. The morning sun broke through my dorm window, and I woke feeling refreshed, ready to take on the day. I dressed quickly, choosing clothes that made me feel strong, confident, and focused. The hallways were alive with movement and conversation, and I felt excitement for the opportunities ahead. I joined friends at breakfast, sharing stories, goals, and plans, feeling a deep sense of belonging. Each conversation reminded me that my efforts and ideas mattered, and my past no longer constrained me. After breakfast, I walked to my first class, appreciating the rhythm of my steps and the clarity of my mind. The lesson was challenging, engaging, and full of moments to contribute meaningfully. I took notes, carefully participating confidently as my classmates listened and responded thoughtfully. The teacher encouraged discussion, critical thinking, and curiosity, and I felt empowered to share my voice. During a short break, I walked outside, feeling the sun warm on my skin and the fresh air invigorating. I observed students moving with purpose and felt renewed determination in my own stride. Later, the debate club met, and I prepared arguments, reviewing points carefully and anticipating questions. When it was my turn to speak, I presented with clarity and confidence, feeling respected and acknowledged. The debate was challenging, thought-provoking, and energizing, filling me with pride and inspiration. My mentor offered constructive feedback, highlighting strengths and guiding me toward improvement. I realized that here effort, skill, and persistence were recognized and celebrated above all else. I walked across campus, feeling freedom, excitement, and possibility with every step. Each step reminded me of the courage it took to leave home and claim my independence. Returning to my dorm, I felt accomplishment, motivation, and readiness to continue excelling. I organized study materials, reviewing notes, and preparing for evening work with focus. The city outside shimmered in the afternoon light, filling me with inspiration and hope. I reflected on the resilience that brought me here, feeling gratitude and pride in my strength. I journaled experiences, lessons, and ambitions, clarifying my goals and reinforcing determination. Writing allowed me to process challenges and celebrate progress, building confidence and clarity. I visualized future achievements in academics, debates, and leadership roles, inspiring continued effort. I felt purpose, excitement, and determination, knowing every action moved me closer to my dreams. I reviewed the schedule for the next day, planning classes, study sessions, and activities carefully. I felt prepared, confident, and ready to face each challenge and opportunity without hesitation. The dorm room felt like a sanctuary filled with motivation, inspiration, and energy for growth. I arranged personal items and reminders of resilience and perseverance to maintain focus. I thought about friends, mentors, and supportive peers, feeling gratitude and connection. I meditated quietly, centering my mind and reinforcing strength and clarity for the journey ahead. I felt empowered knowing my choices and efforts define my path and future. Every class activity and interaction reinforced independence, confidence, and self-belief. I imagined debates, projects, and initiatives where my work could create meaningful impact. I felt pride not in revenge but in creating a life so bright it outshone any bitterness from the past. I walked across campus after the meeting feeling the weight of the year lifting off my shoulders. Each step reminded me of the courage it took to leave home and claim my independence. I visited the library one last time this year, reflecting on all the knowledge I had gained. I imagined the projects, debates, and initiatives I would pursue next year, inspired by my accomplishments. I walked through the dorm halls noticing the friends I had made and the bonds that strengthened me. I collected my belongings, preparing for summer break, feeling pride in what I had achieved. I stopped at the courtyard watching the sunlight on the fountain, feeling the peace of true freedom. I thought about my parents and Dylan without anger, only understanding and quiet satisfaction. I knew my life had been transformed by my courage, determination, and effort. I journaled one last time this year, capturing reflections, lessons, and ambitions for the future. Writing reminded me that I controlled my story and had the power to shape every chapter. I imagined the next year filled with opportunities, growth, and achievements beyond anything I had dreamed. I walked toward the front gates of the academy, feeling every step as a symbol of my journey. The city beyond seemed alive with possibilities, and I felt ready to embrace every one of them. I reflected on the year, knowing that leaving home had been the first courageous step that led to everything. I smiled at the friends, mentors, and classmates who had supported and inspired me along the way. Every challenge I had faced had prepared me to thrive and excel in this environment.